What up, my nerd brethren? And it is finally time to start a new project. This time we'll be looking at the Pro X range of Beyerdynamic headphones, which have got the new Stella driver, which is something that we haven't played with. In this first video, we're just taking the first steps. Baby steps, baby steps. So we're gonna open these up, have a quick listen to all of them, stick them on the rig, maybe make a few graphs on our not so brilliantly accurate graphomotron and see what might need adjusting, because I know these have got a couple of dips here and there which might want to go away. Some people have complained that the bass is a little bit bloomy, possibly. Not boomy, but bloomy. Maybe just a little bit too much bass here and there, or it needs tightening up. So once we've taken some measurements and had a look at the graphs, what we'll do is we'll open these up, have a look inside, and see how we might attack this kind of thing. So join me on the start of this journey towards tuning the Pro X range. I don't know if you have a set of these. Most people seem pretty happy with them, but I have had quite a good few messages asking if we're going to be doing a kit for these, so I suppose we should look in to see what's possible. So without further ado, let us bust these bad boys open. So we've got the 700 Pro X, the 900 Pro X, and the new 770 Pro X. All of them are, I think, 48 ohms, something like that. The idea being that you can plug them straight into most equipment and they'll run. You know, these are kind of like people with home studios, so you can get that kind of studio quality, but not have to have a separate kind of mixing console or amplifier to drive them, because a lot of the other ones are sort of 80 to 250 ohms, and they do a 32 ohm version, but it's not great, in my opinion. It's not terrible, but it's not as good as the others. Whereas these will run quite nicely off most equipment. Okay, so 900 Pro X, the open back ones, new pads that they developed. So we've got the 700 Pro X there, and this one's the 770 Pro X, which is the latest one. Out of the three, I like this one. It's more, I like the professional stuff, and that is more professional than those. Like, it comes apart nicer. Doesn't look quite as fancy, but it's easier to work on if you've got to repair them. We are going to need a cable. Let's do one out of one of these boxes. Was going to get one of our fancy cables, but I don't have one to hand. Anyway, this is the cable that will come with them. Oh, you get a case as well. All right, cool. Cable. I like the little orange zip tie you get there, which ties in with the Beyerdynamic branding. That's their kind of accent colour they use these days. It's a nice orange, as far as oranges goes. It's one of the good ones. Again, the plastic bag around the cable, I'm not sure that's necessary. Trying to cut down on plastic. The rest of their packaging is cardboard. It's really good, you know, cardboard inserts, cardboard box, paper tape, but the plastic, everything coming in plastic bags is probably something they could cut down on. We've started using paper bags, you know, like the ones you get in sweet shops, and yeah, they don't look quite as fancy, but they keep the dust off, the same as the plastic bag, and they're biodegradable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a quick listen to these, and then we'll describe the sound. Quite interesting. As you can imagine, they're all pretty good. Yes, it's very difficult. I think the 700 Pro X, the treble is not as pronounced as in these, so you don't get quite as much detail. You get a slightly warmer sound. I think the bass comes out more on those, like the very deep sub bass. Like the bass drops very low on those. They don't kind of seem to roll off very much in the very low frequencies, but the higher frequencies you're missing a little bit of detail. If you like a warmer sound, that's probably the one to go for. The DT770 Pro X seemed to have a bit more detail, like the traditional Beyer kind of sound, where you probably got a bit more of a peak in the treble, so you can pick out more details. I was quite surprised. The pads on those are very, very comfortable. I think they might even be more comfortable than the 770 pads, which are some people's benchmark for comfortable pads. So they seem, to my ears, they seem quite comfortable. But yeah, these have got more detail in the high end, which makes the whole thing seem a bit more detailed, and the bass probably isn't quite as pronounced on these, probably because you're getting more of the treble. These are a similar sound to the Pro X, so again you've got a bit more treble than the 700 Pro X, but a more open sound. You know, they are open back. You do get a little bit more feels a bit more open, a bit more sound stage. There's nothing particularly wrong with any of them. I felt like the mids maybe a little bit congested on this. These could do with a bit more detail, possibly slightly more. And again, as I said, the bass comes through fine. It could maybe just do with a bit more texture in the bass. So let's just take some graphs, see what we're looking at. I know there are a couple of dips that possibly need fixing on some of these, so let's just get this up. And what I'll do is I'll measure them all at the same volume on here, and we can see if one's louder than the other, that kind of thing. Okay, so I'm going to measure it from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, and this is the 900 Pro X. That is really flat until you get to about just over 4K. And then you've got a huge dip and then slight hump in the treble, not the usual sharp peak that you get on the Beyerdynamic, so a more smoothed off peak around 8-9K, and then it kind of goes off from there. So it's certainly up until sort of 2.5K, very flat. Then we have a bit of a dip, then a slight peak in the treble, so that's very good. I'm just going to have a look down to 10 hertz, and it's flat all the way down to 10 hertz. So this has the potential for really good quality bass. Like, it's not struggling at all at 20 hertz. It can keep going all the way down to 10 hertz without breaking up. So we have potential for crispy bass, and it's very good already. But that's always a good sign when the driver doesn't roll off. It just means that you've got more to work with. That dip is quite interesting at 4K. Let's measure the others. Alright, so this is the 700 Pro X. Again, our rig is not super accurate, but it's good for comparing one thing with another thing, just so you can see what's different, what's good, what's bad. It's fine for that. So yeah, this is just raw data, not compensated. I've had a look at a lot of headphones. I vaguely know what it's... Sorry, I talked then while it was measuring. Let me do that again. Right, okay, so 900 Pro X, this is the 700 Pro X, and as I said, the bass is possibly a little bit too bloomy. So it's got quite a lot more down in the sub bass region, and then we've got a dip that comes down about 200 hertz, and then again we've got that same dip but not as pronounced at about 4K, and the treble is pretty similar. Got more around 2K, then a dip, then back up in the treble. Because everything else is a bit higher, yeah, certainly if you look around 2K, you've got maybe 10 decibels higher, and the bass is like maybe 15 decibels or something, or 17 decibels higher. It makes that, even though the treble's lining up on the graph, it makes the treble seem recessed because everything else is up a bit. So with that, I would probably like to flatten off that bass, make it less humpy and bumpy, and take out that dip. So the 900 is pretty good. I don't think it needs a lot doing. If we can get maybe a little bit more up above 11K and get rid of that dip a little bit, that would be ideal. I don't know whether that dip is a feature of the driver or whatever. We'll have to have a play. I'm sure Beyerdynamic would have taken that out if it was an easy thing to do. On the 700, I definitely think there's some room for improvement on that. We could definitely flatten out that dip that's around 200-300 hertz. That might make them sound a bit better. I don't know if that's possible, but if that's what I'd probably be looking to do on those. And then let's get the DT700 Pro X. Compare that with the other two. I suspect this is going to have more of a treble peak to this one. Yeah, so as I thought, this has got the more traditional 8K Beyer peak. We have got a bit more going on up in the higher frequencies as well. The dip in 4K is sort of between 2 and 5K is there, but it's not as sharp as the other two. Yeah, so it's maybe not a feature of the driver. As you can see in the lower end, we've got the same kind of dip on this one as the 700 Pro X, around 200 to 300 hertz, but you haven't got as much of kind of a hump around 3K, and the bass doesn't come up as much. Obviously the bass is a bit more lumpy and bumpy than the 900. Out of the three of them, the 900 seems to be the flattest, probably best for studio use. But if you've got to have a closed back, out of the two of them, I'm probably going with the 770 Pro X, just because it's a bit flatter, and the extra detail in the treble helps you spot mistakes in the mix. So again, that one I would want to take out that dip at about 200 hertz if we can, flatten out a couple of lumps in the bass. Probably leave the treble peak where it is. I don't know. We'll have a play with that. It's not vicious. It just gives you that detail. I don't think it's going to be too fatiguing, so like a 250 ohm 770 is probably a higher, sharper peak, which is a little bit fatiguing for some people. I don't think this is too bad. It's just going to bring out that detail. Yes, so there's definitely, like, the 900 is pretty good, and if we can get rid of that dip. What I was thinking was, so let's say that the dip is at 4 kilohertz. It's roughly at 4 kilohertz. So 4 kilohertz has a wavelength of 85 millimeters. So the wave is 85 millimeters long. How big is the enclosure on this pair of headphones? Like if we yeah, on the outside up here it is about 87 millimeters. So on the inside, I suspect the inside dimensions of this are 85 millimeters, roughly the wavelength of the big dip that we have there. So there may be some kind of cancellation going on in there. So you might be having some kind of standing wave inside the ear cup, and because that's coming off the back, that'll be the opposite wave to the one coming out the front, and that might be cancelling that out. So I suspect, using a little bit of measurement and judgment, I suspect that that dip is caused by the ear cup and possibly damping the inside of the ear cup in the correct way might take out that dip that we've got at 4K. So that's interesting, and that could be why we're not maybe getting that on the 700 Pro X, because they've got a slightly different size driver, I think. It's similar. It's a little bit bigger. That might be what it is. But anyway, it's just a bit suspicious when you've got a measurement that's exactly the wavelength that you're missing, and you're like, something. I think, it's to be the chalk outline on the floor in a detective thing. I'm like, there's clues here. There's clues. There's hope. There's hope. Let us have a look inside the 900 Pro X quickly. Now, then inside, there's a retaining ring here, and underneath there is a pad there, and that will take out some of those higher frequencies, which has probably taken out the peak that you've got in those, the traditional Beyerdynamic peak that you get at 8K. We'll just open this up quickly, have a look inside, and then we might try it without that pad in there, see what that does. That's the first thing we try, just to see what it does. Right, so inside, this is the Stella driver. There is the inside of the ear cup there, you can see, so it's not quite as open as you might think. You just got some small holes there. Some of this is closed off, but it's enough to give it that slightly more airy sound. And this is the actual Stella driver, so I think that's around 53 mil probably. Let's have a look. Just over 40 mil by the look of it, that driver that's in there. You can see you've got the paper around the outside here, which is part of their tuning system, and again you've got the holes open in the back. And then you've got this little bit on the outside, and this will be used for tuning also, and that can be removed. And on the 700 Pro X, it's slightly different. It's got some holes in there that this one doesn't have to change the tuning on it. There we go. So that's the back off there, and that where the air comes out, I don't know if you can see it, but it's got the edges all rounded over nicely, so it's quite nicely designed. You've got a rubber bit on there, so a sheet of rubber on there, which presses on these little stays here, which gives the driver additional support, which helps with the base weight on the actual driver inside. So you can see you've got a pretty dirty big magnet there, bigger than on the older 770s, but not quite as big as the Tesla driver that you'll get in the 1990s or something like that. So magnet size seems to have a big factor in the amount of kind of base control you get. It can control that voice core more accurately with a big chunky magnetic flux. Socketed driver, which is nice, means you don't have to unsolder anything if you've got to replace anything. The fact that you can get this open, so if hairs or something manage to work their way inside, you can clean it. That is nice. I think if we're measuring the driver in the official way, it would be a 45mm driver. So a bit smaller than the DT770, the older DT770s. I think theirs is around 50, 53. I might be wrong. It's been a while since I've measured those. So yeah, so certainly maybe altering this thing, different materials in here, maybe, I don't know, damping on the inside to reduce that peak. These are all things that we're going to have to experiment with and see how they go. But just for shits and giggles, what we'll do is we'll take out this, which they've used to tune it, and we'll take out this, that they've used to tune it, and see how it was before Beyerdynamic tuned it. This is not how it's designed to be run. So this is without this and this in there, so you do get that peak in the treble, the traditional Beyer peak. You do get a lot more going on up in the high end, so you've got a couple more peaks going up in the high end. It's reduced that dip that we had at 4K a little bit. Yeah, generally it's not as flat without this in there, so the mids a little bit higher, sub bass a little bit lower. So yeah, so that's obviously they've done a good job tuning it. It's just interesting to see that's where they started from. They did these things, they got it nice and flat, and then they probably went, oh, that dip, oh, but everything else is so good. I feel their pain. I've been through that. Let's just see, down to 10 hertz. Yeah, so it just keeps kind of dropping off, whereas before it stayed pretty flat. So yes, that is quite interesting. I suspect that is partially, as I said, we've got the rubber thing on there, which gives it a bit more support, which helps with that low end. So taking this off, the driver hasn't got as much support, so you're not going to be able to produce those very low frequencies quite as well. Also, this will have restricted the airflow in a certain way, which is probably what brought those mids down in line. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things you kind of have to experiment and tweak. But there we go. So that is the start of this journey, and I think there's definitely potential. Like, we can get rid of the dip on the 900 Pro X. I think some people would be happy with that. These at the moment, I think need the most love. The 700 Pro X, I think they have got the most kind of fixable issues, and we could definitely do a kit which will bring them up to that next level, I feel, for these. I haven't tried it yet, but I have a feeling that those could be made to be a little bit better with a little bit of tweaking. The Pro X, 770 Pro X, they're pretty good. They're pretty much like a DT770, but with better bass. The bass drops down further with this new driver with the bigger magnet. Yeah, so if you kind of like the 770 sound, this is similar to the 770 sound with better quality bass, but again, we've done a lot of work on the 770 and we've reduced some of those dips and bumps in the bass to make it flatter. Like our V3 tune is much flatter on the standard 770s than it is on the stock one. So I definitely think we've got potential here somewhere. So yes, there's definitely potential for tuning, and yeah, leave it with me. I'm going to try a load of stuff. We'll see what happens, and then I will probably give you an update at some point in a couple of weeks once I've had a bit more of a play with these. But anyway, I hope that was interesting to see how the journey would start. And yeah, stick your comments down below if you've got a set of these, what you love about them, what you hate about them, because we're going to be producing some mods for them. Anyway, it's been fun hanging out, and I will see you guys again.